Hey YouTube, we're going to repair the Vitamix 2100 here. We've noticed some leaking. We'll show you exactly where we're seeing the leaking. We picked this unit up on eBay and love it. It's great. It makes the wife happy, so we've got it. Where we've seen the leaking is right here. This sort of funky looking fibrous mass that was at one time a gasket. And you can see that it doesn't really stay on there. I was able to slip it off by hand. And you can see what kind of shape it's in here. And so there's a bit of play here between this hexagonal drive shaft and the bottom of the unit that has the bearing in it, and that's creating a little bit of a leak. So after...
Only slight, where it will spatter just slightly here sometimes, but not all the time. But better fix it since we can.
After looking around online, we found a guy who sells a repair kit for the 3600, but it's compatible with several other models. It's a little bit different in that it, as you can see, includes an Allen wrench and an Allen head screw, because the 3600 and some other models actually contain a screw that holds this piece on. That's not the case here. In our case, we can take the whole works apart, and I used a pair of vice grips. I've already loosened this, but you can use a socket set if you have a large enough socket for this big retaining nut. I just hand tighten it back up to show how it comes off. There's a metal washer that fits on the bottom side of the canister, and then the whole system comes out like so. And so what we're now going to do is replace this shoulder washer here. This is what keeps pressure between the bottom of the canister and the bottom of this bearing assembly. We're also going to use our 3/8 inch socket to remove the blades. That should give us enough play to be able to replace the washer that we just saw that's in such bad shape right up under here. So for that, I'm going to use my vice grips to hold the drive shaft and my ratchet to loosen the blade assembly. So bear with me just a minute while I do that. As I said, on this particular model, the nut we're trying to get off here is 3/8 inch. So just using the vice grips to hold the drive end, we can loosen up the nut. I've read on some models that it's better to do this with a long extension like this and actually loosen it while it's inside your inside the mixer canister. This set of directions actually even suggests putting a block of wood in so that the blades will have something to push against. Not really necessary in this case. As you're taking this off, be careful not to lose the nut or the lock washer that holds the blades on. Of course, that'd be an easy thing to find at a hardware store, but it's better to not have to. We're going to pull the blades off. One thing you might notice here is this is a great opportunity to do a good thorough cleaning on everything, because there's some gunk around the base of these blades as well. I'm going to go ahead and take my vice grips loose, because I believe that now I should be able. There we go. Here come the blades. I'm going to put these on so that I will remember how they fit together. There's our bearing assembly. And now the piece that we need to get free comes out, and this will be where we'll put that new fiber washer in just a moment. And I think, yep, there's another washer right there that actually that's in pretty good shape, but we might go ahead and replace it because it is showing some signs of dry rot around the edges. So our pieces are cleaned, ready to start reassembling everything. I'll just point out, I'm reasonably sure that these two washers were the same when the device was manufactured. The one that's been sandwiched between the blades and the top of the bearing assembly has weathered the years a lot better than this one has. So as we start to reassemble, I'm going to go ahead and get the washers out here. And we'll just talk about where it looks to me like that each one of them goes. First of all, for us, we're not going to use the Allen wrench or the Allen screw. We don't have any need for those. Or this little lock washer here. Set those guys aside. So all we're going to replace is this big shoulder washer this piece and these two fiber washers. So first I'll pull this big rubber washer off, and it's actually still in pretty decent shape. I'm going to slip the new one on. Okay. Now we're going to put some oil on the moving part here, the drive shaft, I guess. And I've got some cheap, poor quality coconut oil. Don't cook with it, but it's great for lubricating things. So I'm just going to put it all over that. There we are. So now we just have to try to remember how everything goes back together. Alright, I'm going to put one of these red fiber washers right there.
Do you think at one time those were red?
I have no idea. They may not have made them red back in those days.
Just curious.
That's a good question.
I would hope they couldn't turn completely black.
And the next fiber washer is going to go here on the top side, and then this metal cap piece goes on top of it, like so. Next up, we're going to put our blades on. And I believe that this piece is keyed. Yeah, there we go. So you'll notice that that hole is not perfectly round, and there are indentations on the piece that I just lubricated to ensure that I put it on correctly. So hopefully I can do that. There we go. So now I'm holding the drive shaft with my finger, and as you can see, the blade does not move. The other blade goes at a 90-degree turn, and it locks in as well. The whole idea here is that the blades are not going to be spinning around on the shaft. They're going to stay completely tight as they should. Lock washer goes back on, followed by our nut, which I'll hand tighten as much as I can, and then we'll put our ratchet back on there on the one side and our vice grips on the other, and we'll tighten it up the rest of the way using the hand tools, about like that. This is probably a good time to make sure everything spins freely. It does. Yeah,
Feels like it used to.
Feels like it did before we started.
Yeah,
good.
Maybe even a little smoother.
Alright, so at this point we're going to put it back in the canister. I also did clean the canister out because there was a ring of gunk around the hole in the bottom there. So it's a good time to clean everything. Bearing assembly back in here. Metal washer goes on the bottom, followed by the great big nut that holds everything in place.
So I can see the
new red
fiber
washer
washer there sticking out, and it had somehow worked itself.
It'll just become frayed.
Out. Yeah, I got so frayed that it worked itself down the post instead of being where it belongs.
And so I just try to thread that back on there. There we go. And this nut was not super tight when I went to loosen it. I was able to turn it pretty easily with the vice grips. So I say that to simply say don't tighten it like crazy, just enough to make it secure. The worst thing you can do for a rubber washer is to tighten things so much that you deform that washer. So I don't want to do that. I want to just make sure that it's tight, but not so tight that it's going to damage the washer that I just put on there. And
I also want it easy to get off again when we replace them in 50 more years.
Right. That's a good point.
When you're 80-something
That assembly's trying to turn a little bit on me, so I'm going to reach in here and try to hold it steady with my hand.
And the blades aren't super sharp, so that's
Right.
possible to do.
Well, and in this position, you're not really turning the blades, you're just turning the nut. I should loosen these guys just a hair more. You could use channel locks on this too, and it was probably a better application is to use channel locks, but the vice grips are what I had, so it's what I'm using right at the moment. Okay, that should do it. Well, this is a good time to rinse it out, and then we'll try it and make sure we're leak proof.
Smooth spinning.
Yep. So that should have us good for several more years. We'll go ahead and throw a link to the guy who is selling this repair kit down in the description of this video. If you found it useful, give us a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.